welcome back. Coach Colleen here to guide you through this next lesson of your 90-day total transformation program. Before we get started, I do want to just take a second to congratulate you because we are cruising. You have learned so much already, and I just want you to take a second and just be super proud of yourself because you are learning so many things. You are implementing so many new action steps. You are absolutely changing the way that your whole body works, the way your mind thinks, the way you look at life. It's really awesome. So definitely give yourself a quick pat on the back because it has taken a lot of effort to get to this point. And I want to give you so much energy and so much enthusiasm to continue moving forward. So with that being said, you are going to need your journal today. And while you grab that, I just want to quickly review kind of where we are. So once you have your journal, sit down and take a moment, and I want you to write down what you feel like is going really well so far. So if there are certain action items that you feel like have been really beneficial to you, or if you feel like there's been a mindset shift that's happened with really like thinking about your motivating factor and using that as your sort of tether, your anchor to help you make different choices, what's going well? So you don't have to write down a whole big list, just one or two things. Feel free to pause me at any point as well if I don't give you enough time. All right, and then secondarily, what progress, even small changes, have you already started to see? So again, this doesn't have to mean that you're already achieving your goals. You shouldn't have achieved your goal yet. If you have, then we need to get a bigger goal because we still have some things to teach you. What little bit of progress have you seen that's maybe moving you toward your goal? And you can tell, wow, I am on the right track. If I just keep doing these things, I'm going to start to really see some major shifts. Go ahead and answer that. Okay, so I also want to just quickly review your action steps. We're drinking half of our body weight in water. We're eating as unprocessed as we reasonably can. We're trying to get 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, ideal body weight. Implementing our new carb-fat ratio in at least 2 meals, 2 meals every day during the week. You're following your lifting protocol 4 times a week and then 2 times a week doing some of that HIIT cardio. And you are also have an accountability plan to stay on track with that exercise goal. So, all right, here we are. Let's dive in. We're going to talk a little bit about self-sabotage today, which you're like, oh, can I turn this off and just skip this one? But no, it's actually super important because we're going to dive into it. And it's stuff that we really need to look at because this is kind of the time in the program where it's going to start to sneak in. So if it hasn't already, hopefully we can help you circumvent it with this lecture. But if it has, don't freak out because it's super normal. So basically, what is self-sabotage? And it's the act of consciously or unconsciously engaging in behaviors that hinder your own success, well-being, or goals, often stemming from underlying fears or anxieties. It can manifest in various ways, things like procrastination, perfectionism, negative self-talk, undermining your own achievements, and basically it's essentially doing things that are working against or are out of alignment with your goals. So I want you to take a minute, grab your journal, think about what are your self-sabotage, either behavior or behaviors. So of the things that I mentioned, do any of them jump out at you, like procrastination, perfectionism, negative self-talk, undermining your own achievements, like not taking a compliment, not giving yourself a moment to celebrate a win? How do you sort of get in the way of your own success or your own enjoyment of your success? So once you've written that down, I want you to think through, how does that choice or that behavior, how does that actually serve me? So we don't engage in behaviors that don't serve us in some way. So even self-sabotage at some point has served you. It has done something positive for you where your mind thought, wow, I should keep doing this because I get this outcome. So for some of us, maybe we come from a challenging childhood and we really feel like we need to be perfect in order for others to love us. And so even though now maybe we're in great relationships and that's not the case at all, we have this sort of embedded belief that, well, if I'm not perfect, then I'm not worthy of their love. So maybe that's it for you. Or maybe it's, again, like that, not celebrating, not actually, appreciating your own achievements. Maybe you think, well, that's just being humble and it's not a big deal. And really over time, this will wear you down because you're going to burn out. And so does that come from a place of not wanting to be seen as someone who has a big ego, and that being a personality characteristic you never wanted to have? And so you feel like, well, if I don't celebrate my successes, then nobody can say I have a big ego. Dive into that a little bit. Once you dive in, I want you to take a moment and actually just think the part of you that has sort of engaged in this behavior, this self-sabotaging behavior, because it served a purpose at some point and it made sense at some point. And now we're just looking at it and saying, does that still make sense for me with my life circumstances as they are, what I've learned at this point, the kind of person I am at this point, and my goals and aspirations for the future? So I want you to think about now, again, journal necessary with this one, when you have a choice in front of you. It's like one of these self-sabotaging choices. So let's say it's, you want to eat well, but it's 9:30 at night. The kids are finally in bed. You and your loved one, or maybe it's just you by yourself, and you finally get a moment to just breathe. And you think to yourself, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to have that fill in the blank candy, brownie, cookie, glass of wine, whatever it is. And then in the back of your mind, you think to yourself, oh, but if I do that, then, that's really flying in the face of these health goals that I've set for myself. I really want to try to get my 12-hour fast. I really want to try and not, elevate my blood sugar, whatever the case may be. So you have this sort of self-sabotaging behavior of wanting to have this thing. And then you have this other side where you're seeing how it affects your motivating factor. And when you sit with that, I want you to go through a process and just journal with us of making the choice. So you make the choice to have the glass of wine, the brownie, the cake, the cookie, whatever the thing is. This is just an example. Make the choice in your mind. And I want you to make that choice and journal how you feel before it. So like in sort of the anticipation of making the choice, during the choice itself, so while you're having the glass of wine, while you're having the brownie, the cake, whatever, and then after. And so maybe if this isn't something like having, a sweet treat or something at the end of the day, maybe it's, saying yes to too many things. Maybe that's a self-sabotaging behavior because, in the past you've told yourself, well, I have to say yes, I have to be this really nice person, and if I don't say yes to every event someone invites me to or whatever, that they're going to think I'm, a jerk or whatever. So I want you to imagine, how do you feel in that moment? You're asked the question, do you want to do this thing? And you're back and forth on it. I don't want to do it because I'm really tired and I just want to go home and be by myself. And the other side of it, well, what are they going to think? And I really want this person to be my friend and I'm really interested in them and maybe it would be fun. Sit in that place before you make the decision. What are the questions and thoughts that are going through your mind? And then as you vocalize and make the choice, how do you feel immediately? And then afterward, how do you feel in the days leading up to the event, etc.? So it can look a lot of different ways. I've talked a lot. You can go ahead and pause me. Really journal on this. I really want you to experience it. Okay, now think about your goals and your motivating factor. And those choices, the reason that we feel this conflict is because, and again, even if that conflict is very, very subtle, is because they are generally out of alignment with our motivating factor or our values, our, goals in life. And it's sort of flying in the face, or it's making us, if we say yes to that thing, then we're saying no to something that, we hold very deeply and we care a lot about. So again, it is interesting to start to look at it because again, we can see how at one point saying yes to the things allowed us to make new friends. It allowed us to perhaps advance our career. It allowed us to, experience things we wouldn't have otherwise experienced. But then at this point in time, maybe it's not serving you. Maybe at this point in time, saying no is the answer because you do need that downtime, that time to self-reflect and be in your own feelings and shut everything down. And so it's at one point, I just really want to reiterate, and I want you to hear that these behaviors didn't just come out of nowhere. They're not a naughty side of you or anything like that. They at one point served you, and you have evolved. And now we can look at them and say, does it continue to serve me, or do I need to make a different choice? So really what we're talking about today, even though we started with self-sabotage, sort of a negative note, is really about how to make change and how these behaviors that we've relied upon have become habits. And then those habits are no longer necessarily in alignment with where we want to go. So we need to kind of reverse engineer. And a concept that I think is really helpful when we're talking about change and how to create change in our own lives is to understand a little bit more about ourselves through, a concept known as abstaining and moderating. And so there's a researcher named Gretchen Rubin, and she has written quite a few books on happiness. And one of the things that she's identified is that people tend to fall into one of two categories with different behaviors. They can either be abstainers, which means that they just absolutely cold turkey do not engage in a behavior anymore, and that's how they change. And then there are people that need to moderate a behavior, meaning that sometimes they engage in the behavior and sometimes they don't, with some like guardrails sort of put in place for themselves. And so you might be an abstainer in certain situations if you tend to have trouble stopping something once you've started. So if you're someone who you see a plate of cookies and you have one cookie and then you can't not have a second and third and fourth and fifth cookie, if that's a consistent thing for you, if that just happens once or twice, it's not a thing. But if it's a consistent thing for you, where you know if I bring XYZ food in the house, I will eat it. I will eat it all in one sitting because I feel like I lose control. That's often what clients will say. I feel like I lose control around this type of food. So you might be an abstainer, meaning that you need to just cold turkey say, I don't bring that food in the house, period. If you are an abstainer, you tend to work well with these types of like black and white. I do this, I don't do that, because you aren't necessarily tempted by things that you've decided are off limits. So once you've made the decision, boom, I don't do this anymore, you're okay with it. It's not like you're sitting there thinking about it and ruminating on it and imagining the next time you could possibly have it, or bargaining with yourself as, well, if I do 2 workouts tomorrow, then could I have that? You are not playing all those mind games. So those are my abstainers. And you might be a moderator if instead that an occasional indulgence actually heightens your pleasure and it sort of strengthens your resolve. So that means, if you say, I will never eat another cookie again, you're thinking about cookies, you're thinking about cookies, you're thinking about cookies, and that leads you to overeating the cookies. But if you said, you know what, I can have a cookie every single day, you could have just 1 cookie. Hope that makes sense. This person that's a moderator also would get panicky at the idea of never having something. So again, that concept of I'm never going to eat a cookie, it just makes them ruminate on it. They get really focused on it. They get panicky if they think that way. And so that's this kind of person that needs to have a little bit of something and figure out, again, ways to have guardrails on it. Because if you are a moderator and you've tried to just cold turkey and abstain from things, you may have a little bit of a rebound where when you start to reintroduce these foods into your diet, then you may see, oh wow, I really just want to eat the whole bag. And it might take you some time to be able to learn to moderate a little bit. So I hope that helps you understand sort of like this spectrum. That's more the way I think about it, because we can be both, and we can be both with different things. So maybe for you it's cookies, and for someone else it's ice cream. And maybe it's not food at all, right? Maybe it's social media. Maybe it is, what are some other really addictive things here? Social media and food are the ones that popped into my head. Again, it could very well be alcohol. It could be, any type of behavior that feels like it could be a little slippery. We can be sort of on this spectrum of abstaining to moderating. And so we're going to think back to again, these self-sabotage behaviors. And let's really try to think of one that we really feel like is limiting our current success right now in this program. And so let's go back to our example of someone who's snacking after dinner. I want you to think about the behavior that you're like, man, if I could just not do this thing, all of this would be so much easier. And so in my example situation, it's someone who's snacking after dinner. They're like, man, if I could just not snack after dinner, I would hit my macros. I wouldn't feel so stuffed. I would sleep better. I would wake up in the morning hungry. I would be doing all the things. It would just be such a big deal for me. So I want you to think back to the thought or action that triggers the initial urge, the initial thought of, I want to have that after dinner snack, or whatever your self-sabotage behavior is. So really, really imagine you're in that situation. And what is it? Is it an emotion? Is it a thought? Is it someone else's action? Is there a trigger in the environment that makes you feel like, oh, I need to do this behavior? Think about all the triggers. It could be all those things. So when you're journaling on this, I want to share an example that for me, I identified. So I would often snack after dinner, and I was not a fan of this because of all the reasons I just explained. It was affecting my sleep. I was waking up in the morning. I was feeling groggy. It would, blow my macros. I would have hit everything perfectly, and then all of a sudden here I am snacking, and that's going to mess everything up. So it was really flying in the face of a lot of the things that were really important for me. And I noticed that after dinner, I would start washing the dishes. And I don't particularly enjoy washing the dishes, which is critical. I would find myself giving myself chocolate while washing the dishes, which I had programmed into my macros. But I would have this as my dessert. And it was making the dishwashing much more tolerable, right? It was giving me something delicious, and I could focus on that while I was doing the dishes. And unfortunately, I would finish doing the dishes, and just that sort of experience almost reopened the eating door for me. And then I would find myself, it was having that chocolate, again, even though it was already programmed into my macros, having that chocolate really was the catalyst for me that then kept me snacking after that. So I would get the dishes done, I'd put them away, and then it was, oh, well, I'm going to have just a couple bites of, a couple of chips, or, again, a cookie or whatever. It was just sort of like, and this one thing. And that would then sort of snowball, and it would be, I'd go into the kitchen and I'd have another couple handful of chips or things like that. So it was this they were very small behaviors that, like I said, once I tracked them back, it was, it's when I do the dishes, I'm realizing I'm having an experience of, I don't like doing the dishes. I have made this meal. I've done all this work. All I want to do is just go and have some me time and be done with the day. And here I am doing these dishes, and I need to put them away. And so it was like the chocolate got me through it. And then these additional snacks afterward were sort of like the celebration of, you did it, right? Like that feeling of, you made it through another day. And so I realized I needed to circumvent this. And so what I recognized I could do, and this is what I'm hoping you can do as well, once you've tracked it back to the catalyst event, you can say, okay, now how can I change that? Can I change the event itself? Can I change the perception of the event? And then how do I change my behaviors afterward? For me, I ended up asking my husband, hey, I've made dinner. How do you feel about doing dishes? He was all for it. And I said, great. So he goes, he does the dishes. I no longer have the chocolate after dinner. And I go, I play with our dog, and everything's great. And I don't have this ongoing urge to keep eating. It's like the meal was eaten, it's all done, and now I can move on to this next activity and relaxation time. And so it was amazing how well that worked to kind of cut that off. For other clients that I've had, they have identified that it's more of an emotion. And so again, they get done with their day, perhaps again, the kids are in bed. It's this feeling of final relaxation where your nervous system just goes, ah, the house is quiet. You have a few minutes to yourself, and we've sort of associated those few minutes of calm and serenity with a glass of wine or with some snacks or whatever the case may be. And so it's saying, okay, well, we can still have that relaxation. No one wants to take that away. That's critical. But how can we enhance that in ways that don't require the wine or the snacks if those aren't in alignment with your goals? And so I've had clients that have done beautiful sparkling waters or kombuchas in wine glasses, and that to them it's something that they wouldn't normally buy themselves, because if it's very fancy sparkling water, it's expensive. Maybe they get fresh limes or lemons that they squeeze in there. It's the same ritual, and they can go and enjoy that on a couch with a loved one. Alternatively, I've had people even start doing different like mocktail versions that could be lower calorie, using, beautiful things, right? Like pomegranate juice and sparkling water and lime. I mean, that's delicious. And again, it's sort of the same ritual of pouring a glass of wine or making a cocktail, but it doesn't actually have any alcohol in it. In terms of sweets, I've had people that have decided that they will buy very nice chocolates, and they will really, really appreciate them. So instead of just getting some Hershey Kisses, they'll go to a local chocolatier and they'll get themselves a little box of truffles, and they are very mindful in the consumption of the single truffle and allow it to actually process when they are seated. And again, it can be built into their macros. It's something that they can do. And once they have that, it's so rich and satisfying that they don't need additionals. If you are an abstainer, both of those, the first one would have been an abstainer, so someone who is going to make a mocktail instead of alcohol. Second one would be more of a moderator, someone who knows that they could have just a single truffle. So if you're my abstainer, you're going to need to think of ways that you can completely change the pattern. So again, in this situation, not having a glass of wine and instead having a mocktail. So we're saying no to wine. Absolutely not. I do not have it. I do not have alcohol. I have a mocktail instead. And if you're my moderator, then it's a matter of saying, okay, well, how can I make this more indulgent? How can I make this more satisfying in this moment using something else? So I hope that's making sense. And let's see. Okay. So at this point, I hope you're really understanding the difference between abstaining and moderating, and perhaps coming up with some ways that you can start to look at your behaviors and think, okay, I've identified that this is the behavior that's not allowing me to move forward on my goals. So what are the thoughts and feelings I'm having prior to that behavior? How can I choose either a different behavior, or how can I change the environment? How can I change the thoughts and feelings beforehand to make the outcome different? So we have lots of different ways that we can affect change. It's just a matter of deciding what's going to work best for you. Alrighty. So the goal for this week is, rather than making the same choice, engaging in the same habit, we're going to try and either abstain from or moderate that choice. And so find whatever way that you can sort of change this outcome behavior. And your goal is to try and do that this week as often as possible, because quite frankly, practice makes perfect. The more times you can do this, the quicker it will ingrain as a habit, and it will become your new normal versus whatever you were doing before. All right, so Michelle's going to take it over in the next video.